Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to host a panel on patient services, keeping pace with the opportunities here at Indegene. My name is Nitin Raizada. I'm the Vice President of Commercial Business here at Indegene, and it's part of my portfolio. I'm responsible for reimagining patient services. Now, the very close topic to me, I have an esteemed panel with me. I'll invite the panel to join me here on board. And yeah, we have the panel right here. I have Mark Metaraki from VP of Consumer Marketing at Novo Nordisk. I have Nicole Dunn, Head of Patient Services, Rare Disease Portfolio at Epson. I have Anthony Scatamacia at Sanofi Genzyme, Head of Innovation in Patient Services. Welcome, everyone. I'll have a quick round of introduction of our panel. They are all very engaged with this topic. They look at some different aspects of the patient services and patient engagement as well. Why don't I start with Nicole and then go through the panel for a quick round of introduction.
Thank you, Nitin. I'm Nicole Dunn, and as Nitin said, I lead our patient services for our rare disease franchise at Ipsen. So I'm responsible for all of the patient services that we provide our rare disease families, both internally and through external partnerships.
Thank you, Nicole. Mark?
Hi, Nitin. Thank you. Thanks for having me here today. So my name is Mark Mataraki, and I'm Vice President of Consumer Marketing at Novo Nordisk. So me and my team are responsible for pretty much everything end-to-end that impacts patients before they're patients and once they start treatment. So that can be everything from creating direct-to-consumer advertising and promotional campaigns all the way through retention and adherence programs.
Anthony?
Thanks, Nitin. Anthony Scatamacia. I'm Head of Innovation for Patient Support Services at Sanofi in North America. My responsibility really is looking across the portfolio at those transformational capabilities. Where do we want to take patient services so that we create that best-in-class experience across our specialty care portfolio? So this is a very passionate topic of mine, so thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And, just jump into the topic. This is a topic which has fascinated me for the last 13 odd years now. It's a very, very wide universe of things that happens. Pharma has been spending tons of money, a lot of effort and focus on patient. And I think over the years, with specialty products coming into the picture, rare disease becoming important, I think the investment and the focus has gone up. But even today, we see that the patients and HCPs and all the service that we conduct are still not very happy. It's not a seamless experience. There are issues, and there is a ton of improvement that is important for the patient and the HCP. And I do agree that pharma also recognizes that. So now there is no one thing, and you will see that reflected in the panel conversation as well. We will be addressing a lot of topics as we go along. With your experience, I'm sure you will have a lot of perspective for our audience to share. And I'll try and present a good coverage of these topics. People have been interested. So we did some bit of research on this topic. We asked people what they would want our panelists to ask, and these questions were collected basis that. So you would see we will move from one topic to the other, right? And that's the spirit of this topic itself. So let me start with EMR. EMR has been there for a while, a lot of interest. We all thought it's the holy grail if we can get connected to it. You are part of the workflow for the HCP. You have all the information at the right point. But it has still not come of age. Let me say that. Now, the question that I have for you is that from an EMR perspective, are the challenges more regulatory or technical? What are the issues that are limiting us from harnessing that entire capability, which people have believed that it holds? Anthony, let me start with you. I know you've been at it. Take your perspective on that question.
Yeah, and I think you framed it up a really nice way, which is it's become such a holy grail. I think that we've lost sight of maybe what the original intention of getting into the EMR was, which is the goal really is to remove that administrative burden that the Surgeon General has called upon the industry to help address. And so, when I think about why we want to be in the EMR, I think that you really have to go brand by brand and think about what is it that you're trying to solve for, because it's not going to be a one size fits all. So I think, I really look at it as two separate challenges, which is what is the size and scope of your program or product? Maybe if you have a smaller program that's got a couple KOLs or a couple institutions that you're directly working with, then it may become a little bit easier to work directly with those healthcare systems to build a solution in their EMRs, versus if you've got a product that's all across the nation and being able to find that one size fits all in a very fragmented EMR landscape. And the other piece of it is, where is your product in its life cycle? If you're preparing for a product launch, it becomes very easy to train the therapeutic area or the physicians that are supporting in the offices that are supporting that product on how to engage with that product in that program, versus if you're very mature into your life cycle, maybe the offices are very familiar with how to enroll a patient, how to write for the therapy, and it may become more of a challenge to implement solutions later on in the maturity. So I don't think it's necessarily a technical or regulatory challenge specifically, as it is making sure that you're very specific on what product profile it is that you're trying to solve for, and what are the challenges associated with that product that you're trying to help the offices address.
I think it is very, very critical. You're absolutely bang on, and I think different products and different use cases, they need to be looked at while we are defining, the program objective. And we have seen some very good successes to something where, the impact has been limited. Automation is the other area where we see a huge focus from pharma companies. Right, we are looking at every company investing large dollars in that. But automation obviously comes with its own set of problems. There is cybersecurity, there's data ownership, there are numerous external challenges that one has to face with. How do you create those ecosystems, et cetera, et cetera. Technology is playing a big role in that, in solving for that. But I wanted to hear your perspective. You are in the thick of it. Nicole, why don't I start with you? I know you are doing a lot of work in that area. Let's get your perspective around it.
Sure. Thanks, Nitin. It's hard for me to speak to the cybersecurity aspect of this, since I'm not the technical expert, but I will share that when it comes to the cost of automation, I've seen many examples where the one-time upfront cost to automate things like workflows and data aggregation can more than pay for itself in data insights, and can significantly optimize the resources, generating those downstream cost savings in labor. And technology-driven automation in those high volume transactions that we do every day within our patient support programs, those things like the benefits investigations and scheduling shipments of free goods, processing copay claims, those transactional types of tasks can be automated and allow programs to scale their operations up or down as needed to the fluctuations in their volume. I also think that we're just starting to scratch the surface of the use of predictive analytics and AI to enable us to either automate activities or to even better forecast volumes or requested services, so that we can forecast our labor needs, and that can help us plan and budget more effectively. So those are some of the more internal benefits of automation. But externally, in terms of the stakeholders that we're serving, when we can do those things, we can process things faster, we can identify their most desired needs, and we can put our efforts in investments into those things that matter most to our stakeholders.
I agree, and I'm happy that stakeholders like yourself, 3 years back, this was not the conversation. Automation was still a new concept, but I do see a lot of people are jumping in that. Anybody else would like to share a perspective? Mark?
On the area of automation? Yeah, I'm not intimately familiar, I think similar to Nicole, on some of the cybersecurity aspects of that, but I can tell you we're looking into use of automation, across the board, whether it's, media efficiency and how we're connecting with consumers to sort of real-time customization of content. So I think there's a ton of opportunity on the horizon and lots of different use cases for automation. And certainly in the in the media and direct-to-consumer advertising space, we're using it more and more to streamline both from an efficiency and an effectiveness in all of the initiatives that we're running.
And I just want to add, I think that the value of automation and where the technology sits today is we're really at that point where automation can create a best-in-class experience, both for not just our customers, which I think is a lot of the topics, but also the internal teams that are working on the systems. If we take a step back and say, not just how can automation, how can technology supplement people's workflow, but how do we start with automation to say, what are those tasks that don't add value to the patient journey? And how can we automate those pieces so that we are putting people in a position to engage in those activities that are going to create the most value for our customers, whether that's the offices or the patients. So I think that that's really, Nicole really hit on the budgetary aspect of where automation plays a very tangible role, but I don't think that there are many case managers when I look at our hub teams that wake up every morning and say, you know what I'm really excited to do, and that's to fill out an enrollment form into our CRM. They're not waking up to do that. They're waking up to engage with the offices and to the patients, and automation is really enabling them to do so.
Well, very well said, Anthony. And I think it is the customer experience as well as the employee experience that makes the difference, right? Employee who's getting all the help, who's getting the right things to do, or obviously is more motivated. And I think that reflects in many things that we do. So which brings me to the very, very connected aspect. I think personalization, right? It's the buzzword, whether it is HCP marketing or now patient. Personalization is the key to engagement. That's where we can see, people coming in, joining the program in the first place. That's been an issue. What, to your mind, are the key aspects that personalization is driving? Is it conversion? Is it creating brand loyalty, or is it retention? What is personalization driving today? Mark, maybe I start with you. You are in the consumer marketing area. That might be very close to your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, now you're hitting my sweet spot. Personalization is the holy grail, right? As a lifelong consumer marketer, that's what you strive for, whether you can get to exact one-to-one personalization or present the perception of personalization through really good audience insights and understanding your population and sort of creating lookalike content that gives that impression that it's semi-personalized. But I think in terms of direct one-to-one personalization, where I see it playing the biggest role from a patient service standpoint is in retention. And I think ultimately that retention builds brand loyalty, right? I can give an example from Novo Nordisk. When we launched Wegovy, which is our anti-obesity medication that was launched about 2.5 years back, we know how important it is to receive direct coaching on a weight loss journey. And that's something that you don't necessarily always expect from most pharmaceutical companies. But so it was really important for us. We built a program called We Go Together, where new patients who are starting Wegovy can sign up and register to get direct coaching. It's a year-long coaching program that's highly personalized. When patients initially sign up, they can elect to either get direct human coaching, they can receive communications through email, through text message. And then the program is really tailored throughout their experience, because we know, ultimately, I would think all the panelists would agree that our ultimate objective is to deliver better patient outcomes, right? And when patients have the support they need, when they can manage through their journey, and when the manufacturers, when the pharmaceutical companies, we're best suited to anticipate what some of those pain points are along the journey. When we can anticipate those and plan for those and create programs that address them, that's what's going to drive the best possible patient outcomes.
Yeah, that's really heartening to hear. I think pharma companies are upping the game when it comes to this personalization. Anthony, I know you've been part of some of these programs as well. You'd like to share your perspective?
Well, I hate that you put me after the marketing expert, so that's a tough act to follow. But for me, I think that I think that there's a very low bar that we just need to be able to deliver on for patients, which is just as they come through the experiences with our product or with our therapy, making sure that we know all the other interactions that they've had, making sure they're not having to repeat information when they come to us, making sure that whether we reach out to them, whether they're going through the enrollment process, we're not asking for new information, the same information over and over, or when we reach back out to them, we know where they've been at in their journey. We can view their claims to be able to determine what challenges may they be having or where their adherence sits. But so I just think it's demonstrating that we understand where that patient is and being able to feel like one unified front to that patient, I think creates such a great experience that we are holding your hand. That's the point of the manufacturer and the hub program, is to recognize your doctor has made a decision that this is the therapy for you, and we got you from here. We're going to take you from that doctor prescribing to getting you onto therapy and supporting you all the way through, so that any of those little things that you can do to create that experience for them goes such a long way into allowing that patient to move on with their lives.
I think you're so right. And, trust in the information, unified information, and seamlessness of experience. I think these are the three things in my mind which drive this personalization. Thank you for your perspective. I'll move to another topic, which is there everywhere right now. As we speak to pharma companies, there's a massive discussion about insourcing versus outsourcing. Right? People are sick and tired of the black box experience. They want to now build their own customer experience, own HCP and patient experiences. And this wave of insourcing has hit the market. We see a lot of our customers going on that, but there are some issues. Sometimes they are trying to mimic what the outsource vendor was trying to provide. There are obviously budgetary constraints, number of issues. Nicole, I know you are in the thick of it now. Wanted to hear your perspectives on this insourcing versus outsourcing debate.
Yeah, thanks, Nitin. Yeah, when it comes to deciding between insourcing and outsourcing to make the best decision, organizations need obviously to evaluate their unique circumstances and their objectives, and frankly, where they're willing to invest their resources. Insourcing requires a long-term investment and a long-term commitment in infrastructure and personnel. Insourcing typically provides greater control over the processes and quality and security of the operations, and you can align your teams more closely with your company's culture and objectives. So for your patient support program, you can create that experience that you want patients to have with your organization. And when you insource, you have the opportunity to build and retain the in-house expertise that's so valuable, especially for specialized skill sets and core functions that are critical to your business. But scaling in an internal operation can be challenging. So scaling up or down with insourced teams, can lead to underutilized resources during slower periods, or teams who are stretched thin if the volumes or the services that are being requested outpace what was projected and the staff that's available to provide the service. So when that happens, the service levels and the KPIs are almost always negatively impacted. And so outsourcing, on the other hand, it can sometimes offer the cost advantages because you can benefit from those economies of scale. You can benefit from access to part-time associates or parts and pieces of technology instead of the whole, the whole basket of technologies. And outsourcing can, allow your organization to focus on its core competencies while delegating those non-core activities to the best in breed organizations. So that can enhance efficiency, it can enhance innovation by working with partners who have the capabilities that can be challenging to develop in-house quickly or cost effectively. But the last point that I'll make is that the decision doesn't really have to be one or the other, in-source or outsource. For patient services programs, for example, we're seeing a pretty significant shift to hybrid approaches where some of the functions, such as those that are engaging directly with patients and their caregivers and their healthcare providers, are insourced, while other roles are outsourced in order to leverage the technologies or proprietary relationships or the expertise of partners. So it can be a hybrid of insourcing and outsourced, quilted and orchestrated together to take the best of both options.
No, I fully agree with you. I think that's a big contrast, or that's a big question about internal knowledge, defined customer experience as you would like to define, and the ability to still get the innovation, scale, stuff like that. Anthony, I know you've been in the thick of this as well. What's been your experience? How are you looking at it?
Yeah, Nicole hit on something that I had in as a note, gray. It's not black and white, it's gray, right? And I think what's important to recognize is if you read the manufacturer's manual for insourcing versus outsourcing, what you would hear oftentimes is early in life cycle or at launch, more to be insourced, you have more control, you want more autonomy for the brand as it's ramping up. Later in life cycle, you can outsource more pieces. I don't think that I agree completely with Nicole that, I mean, I do completely agree with Nicole that I think that we're now getting to a point where it's not so black and white. I think that you have a lot of partners and capabilities that exist in an ecosystem that whether or not those partners are using internal systems, whether you're using their internal systems, whether there are hybrid field roles that are mixed between the internal manufacturers program and maybe you have a supplemental team that's with the partner. I think that there's a lot of different models that work. The one thing that, I do hear this, and Nicole mentioned it as well, that I do challenge with our internal teams is when we say, I hear this all the time, you have more control if it's internal. Yeah, you have more control of the pieces that are in your control, but does that mean with your cross-functional partners, with your, like an IT organization that's got a number of different things that they've got to prioritize, if all of a sudden you have an urgent need or a capability that's come forward, are you for sure that that request is coming to the front of the backlog versus partnering with a contracted vendor that's going to help you through the program? So I think we're now in a phase where, control, even that can be a little bit nebulous, and sometimes considering that relationship with an external partner may actually give you more flexibility to be able to drive the capabilities that you want more quickly. And I think that that's something that when you think about deciding what to insource and outsource, you have to weigh beyond just what's within a patient services organization and look across the organization to say, do we have enough control cross-functionally to be able to deliver an in-source model if that's the route we're going to go? Or what pieces of this need to be partnered completely to Nicole's point, whether it's capabilities or proprietary partners that have been developed externally so that you're able to deliver an effective program.
Yeah, I think with the expanding horizons for patient services, the number of things that we are doing, I think that's a very important aspect as you start making those insourcing and outsourcing decisions. In the interest of time, I'll move to another topic, which is of huge interest, content, right? And I think the general philosophy is the more the content, the more personalized content that you have in the hand of patient, that's a good thing. We are also hearing that the HCP offices, are not really, I wouldn't say they're not liking them, but they are generating a fatigue because now the patient is way more informed. There are 20 questions, and guess who is answering? It's the HCP office. So what do you think, Mark? Let me start with you. That must be in your wheelhouse. Um, what do you think is the right balance? The information to the patient and the discomfort with the HCP offices. How do you strike a balance around it?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of something I said earlier, and I think it's about anticipating and addressing pain points that ultimately are in the best interest of the patient, but do that through an understanding of the full journey, and the ecosystem that we operate within, right? Because I think, design is a really interesting word, and I think sometimes we're probably all guilty of it, right? I think we don't have a seamlessly designed process end to end because we operate in large organizations, and we're subject to resources and infrastructures that exist as we launch new products. So I think, we need to continue to try to challenge ourselves to raise the bar on how to create that truly seamless process for patients. And while we're doing that, I think communication is critical, right? Anything that we're designing that patients are going to engage with, we need to make sure that all of the healthcare professionals that we interact with are aware of what those resources are, what we're making available, and how it may impact the conversations that the healthcare providers and patients are having together. I mean, I can provide another quick example, which we felt was a really, a huge win-win. Wegovy, again, the medication that I talked about earlier, we know that access is still building for anti-obesity medications in the market. And it can be very frustrating for both a patient and a healthcare provider if a patient comes in asking about Wegovy, asking about this therapy, and their healthcare provider writes them a prescription only to find out that they don't have access. They can't go and pick up their medication and afford, at an affordable cost. So one of the things that we built into our process, knowing that access was still building and that this was a barrier, was a way for patients, everything that we did in the marketplace to create awareness and conversion for consumers, we drove them to a website where they could do an electronics benefit verification. So they could check on their own before going and speaking to their healthcare provider whether they have coverage and what their costs, an estimate of what their costs may be. That way, they're walking in to speak to their healthcare provider informed. The healthcare provider then doesn't feel like they may be wasting their time engaging in this conversation only to find out that their patient doesn't have coverage. And it truly felt like a win-win. And of course, we made sure that our sales force was out educating healthcare providers on this electronics benefits verification tool so that they knew what patients would be walking in and wanting to discuss with them.
Right. I think that's very powerful. Nicole, you are in the rare disease area. This question has a very different implication for your space. Wanted to hear your views on this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Mark just said, and for me, it's kind of cliche, this idea of getting information to patients when they need it and how they want to receive it. But ultimately equipping them so that when they go to their appointments with their physicians, they're prepared to engage in clinical decision-making. So having comprehensive and easy to understand resources, articles, and videos that are accessible to them, but accessible in a way that they don't have to go digging and looking or necessarily having to even know what questions do I need to look for the answers to. Instead, information is served up to them in a way that prepares them for their doctor's appointments and can make that time with their doctor really productive, and engaged in clinical decision making with their doctor. I loved Mark's example earlier of the We Go Together program. It's a great example of getting reliable information to patients when they need it, and the virtual support groups or social media forums where patients can connect with others facing similar health challenges can provide another forum for patients to ask questions, so somewhat taking the burden a little bit off of their healthcare providers, as long as those forums are reliable. So seeding information into the forums, moderating the forums, having patient ambassadors within the forums that can answer questions. For some conditions, I think remote monitoring devices can collect data, can send to healthcare providers, and that can relieve some of the need for frequent in-person visits that can be taxing for patients too, especially rare disease families that may be seeing a doctor 3 states away. So when we can do those visits virtually, those can help. And then AI powered chatbots and virtual assistants, and I know there are various opinions about those, but they can be incredibly sophisticated, and they can be available 24/7 and can even escalate really complex queries to the human professionals or to the patient support program when necessary to make sure that patients are getting the information that they need. And then the last point is just the critical importance of involving patients, the co-creation of this, so that we're getting their feedback on continuously on what they need and what's useful to them.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Nicole. And I know the area that you do dealing with is very tough. Finding the patient, finding the HCP, getting them all onboarded. I think I do see a huge role that technology can play in that space. Now, nothing in this year 2023 is complete without the talk about generative AI, right? And that's the topic that's caught everybody's imagination pretty much across all industries. We are seeing a ton of work. Pharma is no exception. So what do you think is the role of generative AI in creating more personalized patient education, patient engagement? Anthony, let's start with you. I know you are intrigued with this topic. You are doing a lot of work in this area. Let me get your perspective.
Yeah, I think that generative AI has a long way to go, but I think the opportunity is huge. So I think that where we currently sit, generative AI minus the capability to automate, large tasks for hubs that are really running these programs, I think that anything that doesn't require a medical or hard answer, generative AI, if it's directional, that's really where the opportunity is, right? So Nicole hit on something around chatbots. I think when we think about this new way to engage with patients, if it is pointing them in a certain direction or it's providing consultative guidance, things that aren't a regulated answer, I think generative AI can play a really strong space. I think that when we think about generative AI, I'm more thinking about the orchestration across the hub when it's talking about connecting a number of different stakeholders involved, whether it's back at the office, the case managers, or the patient, running through that entire process. How do we use AI to run through a BV, a PA being returned back to the office, letting the patient know that where their process sits. So using AI to move along the process more efficiently, I think is an immediate, next step opportunity. But as far as some of the more cutting edge opportunities, I think that pharma's going to have to figure out where it wants to put its foothold down. But I think that there's definitely a good opportunity there.
Thanks, Anthony. Mark, from a consumer marketing perspective, how are you looking at generative AI? Are there any programs, anything that you're focused on right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree exactly with what Anthony said, that it still has a long way to go. So I certainly think there's a lot of interest. There's things that we're exploring. I probably don't have a great tangible example that I can hold up and share for something that we've already executed and have, really tremendous learnings from. Some of the areas, if you think about the full continuum and sort of the full funnel that interest me are the creation of content, the right types of content, to Anthony's point, something that doesn't require, deep medical information or something where you can run into compliance issues with generative AI creating content that may be off the mark. One area where I would love to see an advancement is in the area of translation, right? We often get a lot of requests, especially from our field force, for content in different languages. And it's something that is a lot harder than just putting into, like a Google translation platform, because you want it to be authentic, you want it to be in the right tone. And it's just not simple word translation when you're talking about medical information. So, that's an area where maybe down the road, I'm very optimistic. Maybe generative AI can play a much more significant role in taking content that exists and translating it in a really authentic way into, many different languages, and create a lot of efficiency and effectiveness there.
And just one more point. I think that as part of this conversation, when we think about generative AI or AI, we're always looking at it from the business lens. I think that what digital is really doing is bringing IT closer to the business. It's making it more accessible to the business. It's making it faster to deliver new capabilities. So I think that more and more you're going to have business teams really asking, well, why can't I do this? Or how do we do this quicker? And I think that we're going to, and even when we spoke about how do you use AI to sift through payer forms for medical benefits so that you're able to identify coverage very quickly. So I think that where we may end up landing sooner than later is where regulatory is going to have a very heavy focus on what are you creating and putting out there that is market facing, and we're going to have a lot of apprehension there. What really may be the first next step is how do we use AI to move the process along internally quicker, because it may not require the same oversight and may be something that we can explore AI quicker sooner while we understand what the opportunity is externally facing.
Well said. And I think this is important. I'm hearing this constant theme. Nicole said that about AI chatbots, the work that you are talking about, Mark and Anthony. I think there is a clear promise. There are still to be discovered things, right? How does it handle regulation? How does it take the medical and brand taxonomy into account? It's just not translation. How does it reduce internal work? That is a win in itself, right? And there's so many applications. In the interest of time, I see that my team is buzzing me that we are close to the hour. I think I'll skip a few questions. I had some more around technology, AI, etc. But I'll move to another important aspect, the organization alignment. Right? Patient services, patient marketing, adherence, these areas are growing. It has ramifications on many parts of the farm company, and it is becoming more and more important. How important do you think is the alignment across the organization, to get to these topics? I'll probably start with Mark, and then go around the table. I think everybody will have a perspective in that. Let me start with you, Mark.
Yeah. I mean, I would say organizational alignment is paramount in anything you do, right? Whether you're talking about technology, generative AI, insourcing, outsourcing, budgets, everything that you do. We operate in large companies that are very complex, matrixed, functions that have very specific expertise. So ensuring that you identify the right stakeholders from the beginning and have that buy-in at the beginning, is critical, right? Especially as you're talking about, I want to bring it back to the area we're talking about, anything that impacts ultimately the patient. There's going to be a lot of key stakeholders, and you don't want to make a misstep, right? And so there might be functions or cross-functional stakeholders that could identify a risk or something that may not be top of mind for me. So really socializing anything that we want to move forward where there's, new technology involved, and ensuring you're accurately identifying all of the risks and understanding how you're going to test that before going live and putting it in the market, and having that organizational alignment is critical, because yes, that would be probably that would be the worst case, in a catastrophic scenario where you're putting something out into the market, and you start to encounter issues because you didn't take that step to ensure there was strong organizational alignment.
Yeah, and I'll add to that I think, we're moving in our organizations at incredible paces. And so priorities shift and adjust. So I think maintaining the alignment through whether it's annual brand planning, whatever the forums are, the formal forums, but also the informal forums, because with the cross-functional relationships, the priorities are always shifting based on what's happening in the marketplace, both externally and what might be happening internally between acquisitions and launches and research and development. There's just so many dynamics within the organization that maintaining that alignment is really critical.
Great.
Yeah. Paramount is the right word. So to Mark's point, there is too much dependency on Mark from a marketing perspective, regulatory, legal, compliance. You need your IT team involved. Everybody has to have it as both a priority and a budgeted line item to make sure it moves through successfully. If it were a small project, low budget, and only impacting patient services, sure, you could move through fairly quickly, but I see fewer and fewer projects that's the methodology of the way that the solution looks. Even your market access team that's speaking with the specialty pharmacies has to be engaged with the specialty pharmacies, may know what's coming through on their side. It takes a village to move through transformational activities. That's why they're not necessarily the easiest thing to do. And if you do not have that alignment across the organization on the priority of the initiative and the outcome desired, it is not achievable.
Yeah. So like anything else in large pharma, organization alignment, driving the change, bringing stakeholders together stays critical. Well, and technology, with all its promise, has its own risk. Like we didn't have Saman stay with us today in the call. There are still some challenges that have to be worked out. I know we are towards the end of the session. Any closing thoughts that you would like to share with our audience? I'll go again one by one, and we'll close the topic today. Mark, let's start with you.
Yeah, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for having me today, and thank you to my other esteemed panelists. It was a pleasure to be here. And, I would say, for me, this is about continued progress over perfection, right? And I think we have to raise the bar for ourselves, and we have to come at all of the challenges we are trying to solve by addressing those pain points along the journey and doing it in a way, we use the term seamless earlier on this call. We use the word frictionless internally often. I think the more we can create frictionless processes for our patients and the healthcare providers, the better the patient outcomes will be.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Nicole?
Yeah, I know we're coming up on time. I think that was perfectly said. I think we do important work for important people, and it's hard, but every day I just think our hard is less than their hard, that they're the families that we're serving. So thanks for having us. This was thanks to the panelists. I really appreciate the time today.
Thank you, Nicole. Anthony?
Third thanks. So it was a pleasure to get to speak with everybody. My call to action to the industry is worry less about the roadmap and set the compass. Things are going to change. I think that we spend way too much time trying to design the perfect roadmap versus saying, to Mark's point, put a line in the sand, go after what you want to achieve for a best-in-class experience, get the organization behind it and go after it. Don't be afraid to set a high bar. You may not get there, but I think it's going to be far better than maybe where we are today. So it's a large opportunity for the industry.
Great perspective, Anthony. I agree. It's the compass, it's the direction. We have to just move forward and upward. Thank you, everyone. This was a great conversation. We covered a lot of topics. I look forward to interacting with you later. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.